r/AskReddit. What makes less and less sense the more you think about it? Any word in any language. The more you focus on the word and try to break down its pronunciation and its meaning, the less sense it makes. In some cases you might even end up in an existential crisis. Semantic satiation. Edit. Semantic satiation. Thor, we need to go to Nidavelli. Drax, you made up that word. Thor, all words are made up words. I love how that just immediately shut Drax up. If you watch him in frame the rest of the scene you can see him thinking about it so hard. Women can just, like, grow a human. What the duck is that about? My wife is currently 6 months pregnant with our first child. And sometimes I just sit there staring at her belly. Thinking how, well you see, when a man and a woman love each other very much. How computers work. Like how the duck do all these functions and operating systems all boil down to codes of zeros and ones. On a hardware level, all a computer really does is math. Instructions are given to it in the form of machine code. Everything above that compiles down to it. From low-level assembly to high-level Java or C++. It all becomes machine code on compile. This is why compilers can be written in the same language as the code it compiles. Since all it really does is convert a text file into machine code instructions. But how do we get from electricity, plastic, wires and metal to even cussed zeros and ones? Toast. Cause at some point someone said this bread is too soft and should have been cooked longer. Then they cooked it again. Hardly any other food we cook again. There's twice baked potatoes. Refried beans. Electricity. I'm not technically minded at all. And the more I think about or try to understand electricity the more it just sounds like magic. When I went to electronic principles class, one of the first things our instructor did was draw a big circle on the board and write FM on it. This is the ducking magic button. When I explain a broad concept that doesn't yet make sense, just pretend that it's ducking magic for the time being. And we'll get back to explaining in more detail in later lessons. That button was pushed a lot. That's awesome. The plot lines of most big budget video games. Kingdom Hearts is a pretty serious offender. It's a pretty straightforward game. Until you try to put together a timeline. Or track who knows what, or who's good or evil or light or dark. The whole lore is a mess. If you get anywhere deeper than guys with keys, good. Guys with yellow eyes, bad. The first one was clearly saying there isn't a plot. Just an excuse to have a bunch of Disney characters in a Squaresoft game. After that somebody decided to write an incomprehensible fanfic story and act like it was important. It is literally fanfic. A Disney guy was coincidentally on an elevator with a Squaresoft guy and said, "Wouldn't it be funny if both of our good guy characters fought both of our bad guy characters together?" And the Square guy said, "Okay." Eating. Like the more I think about it the more I believe we are some sort of eldritch horror fiend. So you have this living thing, be it plant or animal. Well, for me to keep on living I have to kill this living thing. Tear its body apart to put inside my body. Then my body absorbs the useful remnants of life to continue living. The living literally lives by consuming the life energy from other living things. Edit. So since this is getting attention I figured I'd share some phrases you can sprinkle into your next food/eating conversation to up your cool factor by 14. You have to say them like Neo from the Matrix though. 1. Killing makes me feel so alive. 2. I love to devour corpses. 3. Death is delicious. 4. Picks apple from tree and takes bite, sweet murder. 5. I'll slowly drain the life out of it. Well, not for any fruit, you don't. Fruits are made to be eaten. Yeah. But it's not healthy to live on fruit alone. Too much sugar. Memories. They're just various synapses firing various chemicals and somehow these chemicals let us relive our pasts. Yeah. And my various synapses and chemicals really want me to relive that embarrassing thing I did in 4th grade at 2 AM. What were you doing up at 2 AM as a 4th grader? No wonder you did embarrassing hit. Moving your muscles. Like how you don't RLY think about doing it, but just kinda do it. Like move your arm. You don't RLY think, okay now move arm, yeah no. I think about this a lot. Like my legs are just carrying my top half all the time. Think about how strong your legs are. You can pretty much run up the stairs with them. Imagine trying that with your arms. It's wild. Money. At the end it's just a symbol on paper, metal, or bits in a computer. And think all the things we do for it. Money is a concept like a number. 2 is not literally 2 things. It's just a visual representation of it. The same is true of writing or words. Cake pops. Why am I getting a piece of cake that's like 1/8 the size of a slice of cake for $2.50 when you can literally buy cake mix and frosting for $3 for an entire cake? Duck cake pops. Amen brother. Mushed up hitty little cakes. The nature of language. And how unique we are for being able to transmit thoughts and information via some complex mouth sounds that change every few hundred years. And by extension, being able to put those thoughts into abstract drawings that aren't actually images of that which the drawings represent, writing, and how that language has essentially become a key component to our thought process. Imagine thinking without words to put things to. It would be purely visual, emotional and sensory. Economic growth is talked about constantly, as if it's to be expected to happen every single budget year. Infinite growth with finite resources. How? And while every single company and even national state claims to have growth, the wages aren't following suit. My candy bar gets a tiny bit smaller and a tiny bit more expensive each year. In the same time, fewer people help care for my kids at the kindergarten. Fewer people help care for my mom at the senior home. The local hospital can't offer any help with childbirth. And you now have to drive to another city when pregnant. The local police station is manned by a skeleton crew, if manned at all. And when you call them, you get someone on the phone who's unfamiliar with the local geography, who sends a car that's 100 kilometers away and will arrive in 45 minutes. Where the duck is all this growth ending up? Huh. I haven't thought about this in years until reading your comment. But I remember reading an article about this idea in New Scientist back in 2006 or so. Basically, the scientists quoted in the article said that after looking at climate data and looking at economic data, what we really needed to do as soon as possible was fix the climate. And our model of constant economic growth would always keep us from that goal, because it basically rewards exhausting resources. One good way to move forward on that was to quit playing games with the economy and change everything to be resource-based, economically speaking. This would essentially give us a 0% growth economy if everything was working well. The economists looked at this proposal and concluded that the costs of fixing the climate and modifying our economic systems was too costly and wouldn't be worth the effort. The scientific community's response to this was, do you happen to have another Earth-like planet we can live on then? 0% growth economy. My biggest bugbear at work is that when things are going well, folk immediately want to change it. You hit your target early yesterday? We'll start you doing that thing that much later today, so you finish at 5 and get all this stuff done. Suddenly I have exactly as long as I need to do exactly what I did yesterday, with no extra time, to start tomorrow's task early. That's fine, because it's worked for the past 3 years. But now because I didn't start today's work yesterday with yesterday's extra time, it'll take 8 hours. But I'm already starting 90 minutes later, as soon as 5 PM rolls around. If I've not finished what I would have started at 3 PM yesterday but instead started today at 10 AM, I'm not hitting the target I've been hitting for the past 3 years. A person being willing to give up his or her right or rights because he doesn't plan on using it them. I don't plan on worshipping any god or gods ever, but I damn well better retain the right to. I don't plan on ever having anyone attempt to murder me, but I'm going to retain the right and ability to shoot the would-be murderer. For instance, I don't plan on ever having to tell the cops, no, you may not search my car/house, but if ever I encounter a bad cop that's had a bad day, that has decided I'm guilty of something, I'll be darn glad I still have that right. How? If nothing existed, nothing is still something. What always gets me is I start thinking, why does something exist? Why is matter and space a thing? Why is existence itself a thing? What if nothing? What if nothing? Then I start trying to comprehend what nothing would be like. but it is impossible to fathom. This is exactly what went through my head constantly when I was younger. Because if you can visualize nothing as pure darkness, then the darkness is still something. It can be seen as optimistic though. If all of this came from nothing, then it seems inevitable that once this universe is gone, existence can begin again. The pronunciation of the okay. I don't get it. I give up. Why? The th in the is a strange sound to be able to produce with your mouth. It's not purely vocal cords. It's not an instant sound, yet you'd be hard pressed to keep it going. It's a complicated combination of tongue, teeth, wind pressure, and sound, yet everyone can do it. That I go to work all day to pay bills for the house I leave empty each day to go to work. You're just working for a place to keep all your stuff while you're not at work. In the intro to BoJack Horseman you can clearly see there is not much of a pool beneath BoJack's pool. However, in season 3 it accommodates a Tesla. His whole house is kind of confusing. He has an upstairs. But so we ever see it? Is that where his office or bedroom is? How do things exist? Like, what was actually the first thing to exist and why? Like, was there ever truly nothing? If there was once nothing, then how did the first something come into existence? And if there was always something, then when did it start being something? Like, you should be able to go back far enough to the point of it coming into being. But if it came to be instead of always being, how did it come to be? You are making my head hurt. Existence. Seriously. I don't get it either. People say I need therapy, but I've tried, and quite frankly it never worked. What in the actual duck did my parents bring me into this world for? Ever since becoming an adult I've realized something. I spend no less, and often more, than 5 days a week doing shit I don't like. Around people I don't care to be around. To earn money. I earn money so I can afford to do things I like, which is a consequence of having a job I have very little or no time to do. Is this bullshit really what my mom put me here for? I hear people complain about how much they hate their jobs all the time. So it's not like I'm alone in feeling this way. Otherwise TGIF wouldn't be a thing. So what is it? Do people just have kids so they can pat themselves on the back and say they did something good in their lives and make themselves feel fulfilled? People say I live a sad existence because since getting into my late 20s I would rather stay at home and wank than find a girlfriend. Why? Because quite frankly, that just sounds like another chore I would rather not add to the already existing list. But hey, at least I never forced a being into existence just so they could likely hate 5/7 of their lives, so I could feel like I was special. If you hate your career, find a new one. It might take years, but it's worth it. Or just quit everything. Pack up your shit. Live off the land. I've done both. But nothing good really happened in my life until I realized that I needed to do what makes me happy. Honestly, how a fax machine works. I put a piece of paper through a phone line to print the same piece out again. I understand it's just sending the information, but it's still completely bananas to me. That one's easy. Imagine you take a printed page and superimpose a grid on it. Then you call a friend and tell them which grid squares have something in them and which ones are blank. As you're talking, your friend draws the result on their own grid, and they end up with a rough approximation of the page you were looking at. They might even be able to read it if the words on your page are written in huge letters. A fax machine is just doing the same thing, but it's using a super fine grid and it talks really fast. This is excellent. Thank you. Infinity. Specifically how one infinity can be bigger than another. As an example, there are infinite decimals between 1 and 2. There are also infinite numbers between 2 and 6. Just more infinite. There are also infinite whole numbers between 0 and infinity, which is countable infinity and is smaller than the examples of non-countable infinity that you gave. Ducking like and subscribe.